Well, first of all, thanks for coming. On your, let's open up the envelope there and pull that worksheet out. We're going to be filling that out as we go. Mary, do you mind going through those first few things there as an introduction? And not to be, I want to explain why I'm doing this afterwards, but I'm going to have Mary read through some of those first things there.
Mortgage guy, my go-to mortgage guy, is a licensed MLO with certified mortgage planners for 8 years. He's the owner of the Candolino Mortgage Team, your mortgage specialists. #1 in volume year to date at certified mortgage planners with over 20 million in volume, 31 million in volume in 2023. 5-star mortgage professional award for 2024 out of over 20,000 MLOs. Wow. Zillow's #8 reviewed lender in the state with over 155-star reviews. Very good. Impressive.
Thank you. And the reason Mary knows this, because anytime I've done a talk or a speech in front of a presentation, I always have her introduce me and I read off a few of those things. Have you guys, either one of you, ever been to a seminar before, like a large seminar?
A what?
A seminar, like where a speaker comes on stage and you guys have been to seminars before, right? So what happens usually in advance of that person getting on stage, right?
Right.
Someone introduces them, right? And the reason they do that is because if I stood up here and just started reading off all those things about, oh yeah, I'm so great about this and I'm great about that and I've done this and I've done that, how's that look? How's that make me look? Makes me look like a braggadocious fool, right? So that's why it's so important for someone else, when someone else says something good about us, a lot of people hear it a lot more than if I'm up here saying it myself. Do you guys know what that's called?
Story. Your story?
It is kind of my story, but it's called Power of Endorsement. Okay, so that's why it's important for someone else to say it rather than myself. Now, it's no different than when you're having a one-on-one real estate conversation. Okay, so if you guys go into a real estate conversation with one of your buyers and you just say, hey, I'm the best person in the world, here's my BBA, go ahead and sign it, and you may end up having to pay me. How's that going to go over, right? It's not going to go over very well, is it? So what I'm going to be showing you today is a way where you don't have to have that conversation with them. And just like you were going on stage, if you were Tony Robbins, I'm going to be endorsing you to a point where it makes it so much easier for them to just say, oh yeah, Tony talked about that. Let me just go ahead and sign that, okay? That's the whole point of what we're going to be doing today, okay? Now, we talked about you guys hadn't had any experience trying to get anyone to sign that BBA yet. What are some objections you think you're going to get to that, or have you heard anybody else talk about any objections that they're having? In fact, and you can get your pen out. We're going to start filling in this form, okay? You can take it right out of the envelope and set the envelope to the side.
Even on my Facebook brokerage, I don't know that anybody's giving anyone a hard time about it. I don't see that.
I've seen it.
Yeah, I've seen
it. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of real estate agents are scared. A lot of real estate agents are saying, well, they think the buyer is going to have to pay, and ultimately that's not necessarily the case, and we want to make sure that they know that. So the reason we want to endorse you so that when you have that conversation with people is this. Let me give you an example. Do you guys have children? Who has children? Mm-hmm. Okay. If your child needed brain surgery, would you guys be looking for the best surgeon in the world or the cheapest surgeon in the world?
The best. The best.
The best, right? Guys, it's no different when you're buying a home. You're making the largest, most important financial decision most people make life to date. And they need to know that they're working with the best real estate agent out there, right? So that's why that power of endorsement is so important. Now, don't get me wrong. You're going to have clients and you're going to have buyers out there that are just going to throw every objection at you, and whether it's the BBA or the market or the interest rates or whatever it is, and you're just never going to be able to overcome that, right? So we can all agree that no buyer is the same, right? They're all different. Do you agree? Mm-hmm. All right. So let's talk a little bit about how we meet our clients, okay? So I think it's on page 2. We're going to fill that part in. Tell me a couple of different ways that you meet a client as a buyer.
Well, in the past, it was leads that would come in.
Yep.
So you don't even know them.
So lead generation. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's one. So write that one in there. Lead generation. What's another way?
Personal people.
So what do we meet?
A referral. Okay, a personal referral. Okay, so that's one. Write that in there. Any other places you can think of where you would meet a client?
Seminars.
Seminar. Okay. How about social media? Mm-hmm. People are getting a lot of leads on social media nowadays. Obviously, personal clients, past clients. Mm-hmm. That's another one, right? Anybody do open houses?
Yeah, I do.
Obviously, you get some leads there. Yep, so that's another reason, right? And then there's lead generation, all right? Now, notice that when I said, out of all the different things we just talked about, we never talked about, oh, I met my client for the first time and spoke to him for the first time while I was showing them their first home, right? You don't meet that client for the first time when you're opening the door, do you? You usually have conversations with them before that, right? Obviously, you're not going to, number one, want to spend your time driving to a house, getting it open for someone without either meeting them first, knowing who they are, or a lot of times getting them pre-approved in a lot of cases, right? So there's a lot that leads up to opening that door. You're not meeting them for the first time at that door, right? Now, but that's the time when you usually meet them first time face-to-face a lot of times, all right? Now I want to talk a little bit about communication. Now, we're all salespeople in this room, okay? So let's talk a little bit about how we communicate with our clients, all right? And this is all going to come full circle here in a minute. So I know we're kind of bouncing around with some ideas here, but I want you to follow me here. So when we talk about salespeople, the definition of that a lot of times is influencer, right? We want to influence the people that are our buyers, right? We want to influence them on what they need to do, right? So what are certain ways of influencing people or communicating with people? Let's think about that for a second.
Zoom call?
A Zoom call, that's perfect. That's on my list. How else do we communicate with people?
Text?
Text, that's another one.
Phone call?
Phone call, yep, exactly.
One-on-one?
One-on-one, face-to-face, right? Email, that's a great one, yep. In person. So these are all forms of communication, right? Now, there's a difference between forms of communication and the way we communicate. Am I right? Mm-hmm. So, for an example, and I use this as a funny example. So you see the sign on your sheet there, no U-turn, right? This is a funny example because my dad, every time we would pull up to one of those signs, would still make a U-turn. And I'd be like, Dad, there was a sign that says no U-turns. He says, no, it's not. It says, no, U-turn. Right? So the way you say things makes a big difference in how it's received. Am I right?
Yeah, sure.
So let's talk a couple of different ways that we communicate in addition to not the forms of communication, but the way we communicate. So can you guys think of any ways that we communicate, styles of communication rather than just the form in which we do so?
Yes.
Gestures, hand gestures, right? So that's one, all right?
Facial expressions.
Facial expressions, that's another one. Can you think of any? How about the tone in my voice?
Yeah.
If I use a concerned tone and I put my hand here, how does that make you feel? Mm-hmm. Right? That's a totally different type tone when I'm excited and I'm saying, hey, it's a pleasure to meet you. I'm Tony, the mortgage guy, right? That's totally different style of communication, okay? So and I focus on tone a lot because tone can really change the dynamic of how you're communicating with someone. And when I go through the scripting I'm going to show you, you're going to see the different tones that I use throughout that communication, and it's really cool. So I'm excited to share that with you. All right. Now let me ask you this. Of the forms of communication that we spoke of, we talked about text, we talked about email, we talked about all those things, okay? Which one do you think is the best way or the most efficient way to influence your clients?
One-on-one,
Face-to-face, one-on-one. Why is that?
because they can pick up the right vibration, whether that be positive or negative.
You can use all the styles of communication when you're face-to-face. Can you see gestures in a phone call?
No.
Can you depict tone in an email?
Nope. Nor a text.
Or facial expression in a text or an email, right? So the best way to communicate and influence our clients is when we're face-to-face, right? So my question is, why are so many real estate agents talking about the BBA over text, over phone, through an email, on a DocuSign? Do you think that that's the best way to explain something and get them to feel comfortable about it? Absolutely not.
No.
Right? The best way is to talk about them when they're face-to-face, right? So that's the point I'm trying to make here, is we shouldn't be talking about that over phone, text, or email. When we're face-to-face with our clients and we're opening that door, that's the best time for us to be able to present that to them so that we're face-to-face, they can see our tones and our inflection and explain it to them at that time. So we've created a formula around this to make that conversation when you get there, to open that door, to make it very easy, okay? Now, it's as easy as 1, 2, 3, okay? First of all, you're gonna meet the client, all right? That's one. The second thing you're going to do is obviously you're going to introduce them to someone like myself. Now, obviously I would love for you guys to introduce them to me. However, if you have a mortgage professional that's your go-to, share this with them. They need to be doing this for you. And if they won't, then obviously I want you to know that I will, okay? And then the third three of that is as you meet them at the home with the BBA. Now, for the next part, I'm going to need a volunteer. So, who wants to be my volunteer? Yes, you.
Oh my God. Me? Okay, I'll volunteer. What am I getting into?
You're going to be a client, and I'm going to be the mortgage professional, and Mary's going to be our real estate agent.
Okay.
Okay?
Perfect.
All right, so I'm going to go through the scripting that I use, and I do this, and I even have a couple of recordings on it. I'll show you when we're all done here, of what I say to the clients when we're in our pre-approval call, and our pre-approval Zoom call, that talks about the BBA to make it very easy for when you get there, okay? So let's start with, we'll be on a Zoom. We're pretending like we're on a Zoom call, okay? I've gone through my presentation, my mortgage presentation, okay? So I'm going to ask you this question. So now, and forgive me, what was your first name?
Deborah K.
Deborah. Deborah K, you like both words. Okay, so.
Deborah K.
All right, cool. So Deborah K, have you heard about this big lawsuit thing that's been going on in the real estate market?
I have, but I don't really quite understand it.
Would you like to hear a little bit more about it from a third-party entity that really has no dog in that hunt?
Sure.
Okay. So I always like to present it that way because obviously, you know, Mary, who's an amazing real estate agent, obviously she's got a dog in that hunt, right? So does that make it a little bit more difficult to really trust what she might be saying?
No.
No, well, either way, I want to make sure that you know that I don't have a dog in that hunt, so I'm just going to explain it to you. Now, the NAR, which is the National Association of Realtors, has now made it mandatory that you fill out a BBA or buyer broker agreement with your clients before you physically show them a home, okay? So now, this document has always existed, okay? It's just now it's mandatory, okay? So it's not like this is something new. However, Mary Kay, I want you to hear me, not Mary Kay, Deborah Kay.
That's all right.
Deborah Kay, I want you to hear me really clearly on this point. Notice how my tone changed?
Yeah.
I got to a concerned tone. I put my hand on my heart. I want you to hear me really clearly on this point. This document is going to explain how Mary gets paid. Okay. Now, typically it is the listing agent's broker that pays the listing agent and the buyer's agent. Okay. So that doesn't fall at your feet. Okay. Now now it's just up to Mary to negotiate that on her own behalf. Okay. So that's why it's so important now when you're looking for a real estate agent to really look through the lens of, are they a fierce negotiator? Can you see by not having someone like that in your corner could cost you tens of thousands of dollars?
Yes, I can.
Yeah. So now, Deborah Kay, I may work with over 100 different real estate agents in any given year. There's probably only one or two I'd feel comfortable sending a family member to. And Mary is at the top of that list. Okay. So I know you're in great, great hands with her. Okay.
Wow, that's great.
Any questions?
I love it.
Any questions around that, the BBA and what it's for?
No, I don't. I understand that
Okay.
we are now supposed to sign a BBA,
Okay.
and that the realtor has their compensation.
And we both agree that Mary deserves to get paid at some point, right? All right. We just don't necessarily want it to fall at our feet.
Right. So I understand that that the realtor is going to do the negotiating.
Yes.
But what happens if she doesn't negotiate the full amount?
Well, then you have a choice to make, right? You can either choose to buy that house and pay her yourself, or you can go find another house, which I think in more cases than not will end up being what most people decide.
But always the buyer knows they don't pay the real.
Mm-hmm.
Now they ask always why. Why I have to pay my agent?
Yeah.
Right.
You don't. I'm still, as a real estate agent, if I'm Mary, that's why it's so important that your real estate agent is a fierce negotiator, because she's going to negotiate the seller to pay that on your behalf so that you don't have to. And if the seller won't pay, it may end up be better looking for a different home with a different seller.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Cool. Now, back into the script part of this, because that's not necessarily the end of it. So Deborah Kay, just so you're not surprised, when you end up getting to that first home that Mary gets to show you, she's probably going to have one of these forms there with her, okay? And there's a couple of different versions of this, all right? One may have the address of the home that she's showing you, and you may have to redo one every single time that you go see a home, or she may have one that covers a certain period of time, okay? So that you're not having to redo that every time. It'll cover you for a certain period of time for her to show you homes, okay? So just so that you're not surprised when you get there. So she'll have one of those in her hand. Fair enough?
Fair.
All right. Well, cool. So that's the script that I use with every single one of my pre-approvals. All right. That way, when you get there to that door to open the door, it's not new to them. You're not having to explain it. And they also have an endorsement of you so that they don't think that you're just, randomly doing them. Hi there, come on in.
No, we just looking.
You don't want to hang out?
Of course. We're gonna have a conversation with Dennis and we come back.
Okay. Anyway, but yeah, that's what we do with all of our pre-approvals so that you're not having to broach that topic with them. Okay. Now, what's the best way to make that introduction to us, right? Because that's important. So as you can see in your handout there's the link to our mortgage app for your smartphone. Now, this is really a really, really cool tool to have in your hip pocket. It's like having me in your hip pocket. Not only does it have different guidelines and things, but it also has what's the biggest part about this is the mortgage calculator. All right. So at the bottom of it is a button with the mortgage calculator on it. So all you have to do is scan this QR code. It'll add the app right to your home screen of your phone. All right. So why don't we do that real quick? In the mortgage app, you're going to see on the paperwork pages in front of you, there's a button that says Introduce Tony and Chris. All right.
See that?
That's the best way to make an introduction to our team. And the reason for that is that's when all the magic happens. So when you hit that button, say you're talking to a client and her name is Mary and she says, yeah, I do need a mortgage. Great. I've got the perfect guy for you. I'm going to have him reach out to you. You go into my app, you hit Introduce Tony and Chris. All right. What happens then, you'll be putting in name, phone number, and email for Mary. And then you're going to put in your name and number just so that I know who referred that client to us. And then that's when all the magic happens. So the client's going to get an immediate text message from me that has an endorsement of you, an introduction from me, and the link to the mortgage pre-application. The reason we do that this way, and it goes out via text and email, so that if I'm on stage like this right now and someone wants to make an introduction, we know speed to the lead is so important. So if by using this, you know for a fact that that client has the tools to advance their costs. Okay, so they get a text and an email immediately with those tools. Then I also get a text message so that I know that as soon as I get off stage or get out of my appointment, I make a phone call to that client directly. Hey, this is Tony. Deborah Kay asked me to reach out to you, said you were looking to buy a home. Congratulations. I don't know how you met Deborah Kay, but she's a rock star. You're in great hands with her. Why don't you tell me a little bit about what you're trying to accomplish so we can see if we're the best folks to help you or not. Okay, so then we go through that conversation with them. Then they also get put into my CRM. So now that if they don't answer that call, me and my team can follow up daily until they do. Okay, that way until they tell us, hey, we're not interested anymore, we're going to keep following up. Right? And that's in perpetuity. So, and then if they do say, hey, we're going to push the pause button, we're going to put them on a different follow-up plan that's just mostly emails. And that way we stay in front of them all the time. Now, what's really even better about this app is that if you share it with your client, especially once they're pre-approved, now they've got a calculator in their pocket that they can use, and they're not bugging you for numbers every single time. They're not calling me to have mortgage payments calculated. But even better than that, it's like a Trojan horse when they're using it. If you share it with them, you're forever linked to that client. And whenever, every single day, I get a list of everyone that's used my application and what they've done. So what we have found is that years later, clients are getting in there and playing with the calculator, and I say, oh, look, Mary's playing with the I haven't seen her or talked to her in over a year. I wonder what she's doing. Oh, she's looking at $400,000 houses now, not $200,000 houses like she did before. I'm going to make sure that I'm going to call Deborah Kay and, hey, Deborah, Mary's playing with the calculator. Remember Mary from a year ago? She's playing with the calculator right now, and they must have had some kids because now they're looking at $400,000 houses. So you probably should reach out to them. So it acts as a Trojan horse too, so that way you guys if I see them playing with it, I can pull those folks back over to you. Does that make sense?
Great. That's great.
Cool. Well, I know that we kind of, it was just a little bit of an intimate thing here, guys, but that's pretty much all I have for you guys. But I want to make sure that if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Yeah.
Any questions around the app or the BBA or any endorsements or anything that I can answer while you're still here? We burned through that in like 15 minutes.
There you go.
And I'm still drinking mine.
Woohoo! Yeah, a real mimosa this time, not just champagne.
Yeah. So help me get this calculator on my phone.
Yeah, in fact, Mary, I've got another way to send it to you. So where 6 months ago we were talking about things in the 8s and the 9s, now we're looking at things in the 6s and the 7s, and In extreme great cases, maybe high fives.
So, obviously, the more you put down, the better rate you get.
A lot of people think that. So
I would think that, but.
so there's a couple of different ways to look at it. It depends. Now, if you're like putting 50% down, well, yeah, that's going to probably give you a really good algorithm with regard to your interest rate. But you will be surprised to hear that 15% down actually has a better rate than a 20% down loan. You want to know why?
Because you're borrowing more and they figure they'll give you a better rate.
No.
Oh, no.
So do we all know what PMI is?
Yes.
So PMI, which private mortgage insurance, was invented to help folks that didn't have 20% to put down on a home still be able to buy a home. However, it's an insurance policy that covers the lender, not the buyer. However, it shares a burden of the risk associated with that loan. So when you put 15% down and you have to carry the PMI, it shares a burden of the risk of the loan, therefore giving it a better algorithm when it comes to creating the interest rate.
Yeah. Oh, that makes sense.
So we do that with a lot of folks, is we explain to them, hey, well, let's put 15% down and we'll do a PMI version that's a one-time upfront fee rather than a monthly charge. So that's a pretty cool strategy. I'm doing that right now with somebody.
That is cool.
Any other questions you can think of?
That is it.
Well, cool. Well, it was a pleasure meeting you and pleasure seeing you again. Mary, it's always a pleasure. So
You know it. I'll see you.
anything?
I'll see you on the 10th.
Yeah, we'll